Alright, so we're going to go over just a few things, tips and tricks on wiring, a few things I've learned doing this a lot of times on what seems to be the fastest way to do this. So first and foremost, I'm going to, so obviously my rack isn't painted or powder coated. Yours should be at this point if you're going to start wiring your lights. The wiring in the lights is the last thing you should do. So this isn't powder coated or painted for the purpose of this video, but yours should be. So a few tools that you're going to need. This one's completely homemade. It's just a coat hanger with a little hook bent in the end. Just something like this that you can fashion is going to be super helpful. So whether you use wire or a coat hanger, whatever, just some sort of wire hook. You're also going to need some just common Dikes or side cutters are going to be nice, and your electrical pliers of some sort. You can also cut wire with this, so if you have these you don't need Dikes. And then for the marker lights and the work LED lights that are going to go in this light bracket, you're going to need 2 conductor wire, which is just 2 wires inside a common wire casing. If you just search 2 conductor wire on Amazon, you'll get about 1 million choices. And for the turn, stop turn, and tail light strips on the front side that I'll show you in a separate video, you're going to need 3 conductor wire. So we'll get to that, but for the strip lights, you're going to need 3 conductor wire. So I'm going to start by showing you how to put in markers. So if you have marker lights, you should have 3 holes on the side of your rack, and you're probably going to have 1 light hole right here. If you don't have these, you're probably not going to have this light hole. But to start wiring your markers, you're just going to go in your top marker hole and then thread it down to the bottom. Also, it's going to be handy to have some sort of flashlight. I have this work light that clips onto my hat. But thread it down to the bottom and then use your wire hook to pull it out the bottom light hole there. And then you're going to want to run your wiring through so you have enough tail to run this all the way to your tail lights. So, I mean, depending on if you got a long bed or a short bed, you're probably going to need 10 to 14 feet. But I would measure and make sure you have that much tail coming out the bottom so it'll reach wherever you're going to tie these into your running lights. The next thing we're going to do, you already have your wires coming out the top hole here. The next thing that we're going to need to do is pull out pigtails for your other 2 wiring holes. So get your wire hook in there, grab a hold of your wire, and just pull out a couple inches through each hole, like so. Do that for the bottom as well. So, this is what you should have. You should have your tail coming out the top. You're going to want to cut that off probably with 3 inches of extra, then 2 pigtails coming out each hole, and then 10 to 14 feet of tail depending on how long your bed is, if you got a long bed or a short bed. So the next thing I'm going to show you is, I'm not going to show you on this rack, but I'm going to show you how to cut this, wire the common wires together, and connect your markers in the next video. Okay, so we're going to pretend that this is your pigtail coming out one of your marker holes, so it's coming out of your marker hole here. So I'm just going to show you how to cut this, wire the common wires together, and then splice in your markers that you'll repeat for all 6 of your marker holes. So if this is coming out your marker hole, it's best to have this taped or zip tied so it can't fall back in when you're working on it. So I would just get a piece of electrical tape, tape it to the side of your rack, however is going to be easiest. But then you just cut it, and if this is 2 conductor wire, I'm using my side Dikes here, then we can strip back the outer casing. And obviously you're going to do that for both. You kind of just grab a hold of the wires and pull like this. Easy way to get the casing stripped down. I like to cut off the excess casing. Okay, so this is what you should have coming out of your marker hole. Your 2 wires, they should both have the casing gone and separate wires. Next we're going to strip them. See your wire pliers. whatever gauge wire you're using, just strip that like so. Next, you're going to wire your common wires together. So just twist together if you got red and black wires, twist your red wire together and your black wire together. And then depending on what kind of connection you're going to do, I recommend the waterproof heat shrinked butt connectors. So you'd put your butt connector on each end of these, heat shrink it down, and then you would take your marker. So this one's got red or black and white wire. So white wire is going to be negative, so it's going to get connected with your black wire, and black wire is going to be positive, and you're going to connect that with your red wire. So once you get these butt connected together or soldered or whatever you're doing, you're going to tape them up and then just push everything back into your marker hole and tap in your marker. So go ahead and repeat that for all 6 marker holes, and that will be, you'll have it done. We're going to go over how to wire in your work LED lights that are up here on your cab. So if you got these lights that are going to go in these brackets here, this applies to you. If you don't have these lights, then it doesn't. So as you can see here, I got my 2 conductor wire on my roll here, and I ran it up into this light hole, and then all the way down and out this light hole, and then I'd pull the pigtail out of this light hole here. So when you do this, just kind of poke your wire in and poke it and feed it all the way down and out here. One tip is if you have an issue with that, you can just feed it and then poke out about 4 inches right here, cut it off, and then feed it in this light hole and then out. So you have 2 pieces of wire. Make sure your pigtail here is going to be long enough to reach wherever you're going with it. If you're going to the cab, to put it into a switch, under the hood to hook it to the battery, whatever. So it's probably going to be 14 feet or so of wire. So go ahead and do that. Once you got that done, basically you just cut off about 3 inches and wire in your lights. Just pigtail your work LED lights the same way that I showed you in the previous video on this one. So you're just going to cut it, wire the 2 common colored wires together, and then hook those wires into your work LED lights. So both of your LED lights are going to be on this common wire, and when you put power and ground to this, it should turn both of them on. I'm going to go over how to wire if you're putting the strip, stop, and turn tail lights like shown here. I'm going to go over how to wire those in. So you're going to need, for the last 2 videos, you need 2 conductor wire, but for this, if you have a 3-function light with 3 wires, you're going to need 3 conductor wire, which is what I have here, which is just 3 wires inside a common casing. So you're going to need to do this for both sides, but just run your wire and start running it into your wiring hole for your stop and turn light in the front of your rack here, and then run it out the bottom, out this bottom side wiring hole that we've ran all the other wires out of. This that comes out the bottom is going to need to be long enough to go all the way to your tail lights or wherever you're going to wire in your strip stop and turn lights, which is most commonly going to be right at your tail light. So you're probably going to need, depending on if you got a long bed or a short bed, anywhere from 10 to 14 feet hanging out each side. So you're going to need to do that for both sides. And inside this wire, like I said, there'll be 3 separate wires. So once you get the proper length out the bottom, give yourself a couple inches, cut this off, and then wire in your 3 wires to the 3 different color-coded wires. So these are black, red, and white wires that are on the light. This wire has black, red, and green. So I just color match the black and red and then hook the white to the green. And then usually your green is going to be ground or your white wire, and then red is going to be your stop and turn signals, and then black is going to be your tail lights. So yeah, just get it wired in, the 3 different wires. You're going to have to do that for both sides. And remember to leave yourself enough tail, probably 10 to 14 feet. So that's it. So I'm just going to go over in this last video some recommendations for actually mounting your rack to your pickup and what hardware to use. This is just what has worked best for us over the years. So what I have here is a star bit that is a thread cutting screw, and then also on the back side I always use a washer and a Nylock nut. So that's just worked the best for us. Nylocks are definitely recommended as they're not going to rattle off when you're going down the road. So the way that I would do this is put your rack on your pickup bed rails, clamp it down so that make sure that it's nice and tight against your bed rails. There's not a gap between the bed rail and the cab rail, the cab rack rail. And then what you're going to want to do is pre-drill all your holes that are slightly smaller than your thread cutting screw if you're using those. If you're using regular bolts, just drill your holes the same size as your bolt shaft diameter. Then you're going to thread your bolts in, and then obviously put a nylock and a washer on the back of all of those. So the trick here to get a nice install is to clamp it. Don't just set it on your rails, because if you clamp it, it's going to be nice and tight, versus if you don't, there might be a gap between your bed rail and the actual rails of your cab rack. So again, up to you. That's just some suggestions that I have. I just want to thank you guys for your participation and purchase of this course. I hope that you enjoy your new rack. I hope it turned out great, and I hope this video was super beneficial, easy to follow, and you had fun doing it. So thanks again, guys.